All right, today we have on the show Damon Hack. Damon is the Golf Channel Morning Drive co-host, and he's the father of triplet boys. Wow. We'll talk about that more later. This interview is just about the progression of choices that Damon made to get to where he is now. Damon, welcome.
Thanks so much, David. Great to be with you. It's fun to talk to you.
Okay. Now, I don't want to get out of the way. I just want to focus on it, and then we can get to the other story. Triplet boys. Here I am telling myself, hey, it'd be cool to have one boy one day. You got three at once.
Yeah, we got it.
How do you juggle?
Done in one shot. It's pretty amazing. My wife and I have blessed enough to have triplet boys 2 years ago. They're running around. They're into everything from music to golf to tackling each other. We play in zone defense, but it's a lot of fun.
Okay. Now, most of people like myself know you from being on the Golf Channel, but that's not where your career started. You started off as a writer, correct?
Yeah, I went to grad school in journalism in California at UC Berkeley, thinking I was just originally wanted to be a radio broadcaster, and went to J school thinking that's what I would do. Ended up focusing more on writing. The program at Cal was very writing intensive. I ended up doing some internships at newspapers, the Fresno Bee and the Sacramento Bee in particular. The Sacramento Bee hired me after an internship. After I got my master's degree, I ended up covering high schools and colleges and backing up some pro beats. And 1 year into that job, I got offered the job of covering the 49ers, and they were still a very good team then with Steve Young and Jerry Rice. And I covered them for 3 years and got offered a job to move back east to cover the Knicks for Newsday as a beat writer, and I took that job, and that brought me to New York, and really things kind of took off from there. I ended up being hired by the New York Times after a couple of years at Newsday, where I covered the Knicks and golf, covered the NFL for the Times and golf for the Times, and then got hired by Sports Illustrated in 2007 after 5 great years at the Times, and spent 5 great years at SI covering golf in the NFL there, and Golf Channel offered me a job in August of 2012, and that's where I've been ever since. I started out doing some backup on Morning Drive and some also another show called The Grey Goose, and I did some writing for the website. I still do a little writing for the website, not as much as I used to write, and now I'm a regular co-host on Morning Drive.
So first of all, that was a great recap of how many years? 12, 15 years?
Yeah, 96. From 96,
wow.
When, I got hired by the Sacramento Bee.
Wow. Help me and help us all in general, try to differentiate writing from being on TV, being on the radio. Some would say that they're all linked, but what's your take?
I think that's a good point, David. I think they are all linked, and I think having come from a writing background has helped me in broadcasting to try to paint pictures and be, visual in a way that can evoke images in the viewer's mind. I always try to do that as a writer, to tell stories, to pique the interest of the reader, and I hope I'm able to do so as a broadcaster. It's a different challenge. You're trying to speak clearly and, speak in sound bites. You can't just go on forever and ever, like you may be able to in a 2,000 or 3,000 word feature story. But I still think the mission is the same. It's to inform, to entertain, and to do so in a concise and easily understood manner. So that's something that I have always tried to do as a writer. That's still something I try to do as a broadcaster as well. But I do think good writing, whether you're a radio broadcaster, television broadcaster, a newspaper reporter, or a feature writer or an author, I think words are very important, how you use them, and the way you use them can really help bring life to the stories you're trying to tell your viewer and your reader.
Do you miss writing as much as you did? I mean, there was a time, where you were, how many articles were you publishing or getting published a week in your time as a writer, I should say?
Yeah, I enjoyed it, and I still do. I think there was a time when, probably soon after the boys were born, where I just felt like it was getting harder and harder to be able to put in the time that I needed to do great feature writing for SI. I think I left at a good time because the physical demands and the mental demands of writing, I used to think as a newspaper guy, well, those magazine guys have all the time in the world to work on these stories, and they do have extra time, but some of that extra time comes with the burden of waiting and trying to craft a perfect lead or a perfect story. And in football and golf in particular, those are Sunday sports. So when you're writing your story, you're up all night, Sunday night, writing into Monday morning, finishing your story at 8:30 a.m., sometimes on no sleep, usually on no sleep. And for me, just physically with the boys, that was getting harder and harder for me to pull off. I'd be going out on assignment, and I'd get back to the hotel, I'd have to take a nap. I'd write from 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. and then take a nap and wake up at 5 a.m. and try to finish the story before I have to send the story at 8:30. It just got harder and harder. So I think I would have continued to write, and I would have loved to think I would continue to have written well. But when the job came for Golf Channel, it just felt like the right time. It just felt like the right moment for me to try something different, which is really what I wanted to do in the beginning when I wanted to be in broadcasting. It just took me a while to get there, and I still love writing. I love great writing. I love reading all my former cohorts and coworkers' stories, be it on the web or in the magazine or in other newspapers. But for me and for my family at this time of life, this felt like a great move.
Now, before we get into Golf Channel and this new chapter, which I think is pretty cool, pretty exciting. We talked about the difference between writing and writing and how, maybe not so much a difference, but how it plays into how you portray things. Now, you just talked about how you go from writing for a newspaper to writing for a magazine. Now, kind of touched on it, but what about broadcasting? You always wanted to do it. What drew you to being in broadcasting, whether it's radio or TV?
Yeah, growing up in Los Angeles, I was lucky enough to have a couple of really the greatest broadcasters ever, and I'm talking like play-by-play sports. Chick Hearn, who was the longtime voice of the Lakers, and Vin Scully, who still is the longtime voice of the Los Angeles Dodgers. And I used to listen to them on the radio, or if they were doing a simulcast, I'd watch and listen to them on television. I just thought their ability to paint pictures, tell stories, speak with passion and energy and their knowledge of the game, I just thought they were so good. And part of it may have been the fact that the teams were good and interesting and, fascinating characters. You had Magic and Kareem and James Worthy, and in basketball, you had Fernando Valenzuela, in Pedro Guerrero, Steve Garvey in baseball, and all these figures became kind of larger than life characters to me as a young person growing up, and I just wanted to be one of those who could tell those stories. And obviously, I played sports. I would be watching the Laker game, and I'd be taking stats as if I was a reporter, and listening and hoping that Magic would get a triple-double, and keeping track of his points, rebounds, and assists. And I just got into the whole being of sports and wanted to be a part of it in some way, playing it, writing it, talking about it. So I knew what I wanted to do at a young age, and I think the sports teams that I grew up rooting for and the games I watched and listened to played a big part in my job today.
Yeah, you mentioned Vin Scully, and I grew up in Phoenix, Arizona. I was like, man, what is the big deal about Vin Scully? I heard a game between the Dodgers and the Cubs, and he called it, and I was like, wow, he's doing it by himself. And I think that I would listen to every single one of their games just to hear him tell me about the game. I'm not even a Dodgers fan, but yeah, those are good role models. Those are great role models.
Yeah, they paint beautiful pictures, and I have heard other people talk about Vin Scully in those terms. Even if they're not Dodger fans, they appreciate his craft very much.
Now you covered all the sports, right? I mean, mainly NFL and golf, but you covered the NBA.
Yeah.
What was it like covering the Knicks in New York? Wow.
That was fun. That was quite a change of pace covering, the Niner beat was very competitive and the Bay Area was competitive, but New York as a beat writer is a different kind of competitiveness. And the Knicks back then, they had Patrick Ewing and Jeff Van Gundy was the coach, and they had Latrell Sprewell and Allen Houston, and the passion and the thirst of the New York sports fan is just like nothing I've ever seen and had nothing I'd ever experienced. And being a part of that, competing with the New York Post and the Times and the Daily News when I was at Newsday, it was quite an education. And being in a packed Madison Square Garden when you have the Heat or the Celtics or the Pacers visiting, just the sound and the volume and the absolute passion of the fans it was quite an experience, quite a spectacle, as you could imagine being in some of those games at MSG.
And the NFL, what is the NFL like? I mean, that's for any sports fan to go to Madison Square Garden for a Knicks game should be on your bucket list. What about the NFL? How did that compare?
Yeah, the NFL is so huge. I think I covered the league at a time when it just became so big, and it was amazing how television and the Super Bowl and these players and just how popular the game became with fantasy football and high-scoring games and the offensive explosion. I covered Rice and Young and Garrison Hurst and Terrell Owens and J.J. Stokes and saw some high-powered offenses. And I think it was neat to just, to be at a Cowboy Stadium or to be a candlestick for a playoff game, to go to Lambeau Field and to be a part of that historical stadium and with some of the greatest fans that you'd ever find anywhere in any sport, Packers fans. It was it could be overwhelming sometimes just how passionate and how big football became when I was covering it, and how big it blots out the sun. There's no other sport that could even come close to just how big and how the depth of fanship and fanaticism of that the NFL engenders.
You talked about it a couple of times, just about the atmosphere, whether it's in New York with the fans or just the NFL as the let's call it the mothership of leagues, following wise.
Yeah.
Did that put any pressure on you? Did you feel like the pressure of having to, dare I say, produce or to do a great job? Maybe that's a very, very dumb question, but I mean, in the moment, whether you're at Lambeau or Madison Square Garden or wherever, do you feel like all those eyes and ears? Do you feel like, hey, you know what, I got to take care of them, or is it more so just like a natural flow where you did what Damon always does?
Yeah, I mean, I recognize, writing game stories. I covered 2 Super Bowls for Sports Illustrated. It doesn't get any bigger than that at SI, and those are stories that took a lot out of me. But I also feel like I rose to the occasion and wrote 2 of the best stories I'd ever written at SI. The Cardinals-Steelers Super Bowl, the Giants-Patriots, the second Super Bowl. You get almost on a high. You get by on adrenaline, and you're moving around after the game and talking to as many people as possible and trying to gather scenes. And you're part of a huge week. You know that the Indianapolis or Tampa, which is where the two cities were. They're packed with people, and that people are going to be reading your magazine in 3 days after the game, and there's some pressure there, no question about it. It's a story that you think about months before you write it. You know that you're going to be under the gun on that Sunday night. But what a great feeling when the magazine comes out and your name is on the cover and you feel like you've done a job that your predecessors, that your editors, that your peers respect. That's a great feeling as well. It makes it worth it, but I'm glad I don't have to write the Super Bowl stories anymore. They add a few gray hairs to your head, but it is a fulfilling completion. It's a fulfilling task once you've finished it as well.
Okay. Now what about Golf Channel? You were saying that it was a godsend as far as timing.
Yeah, I think in my heart of hearts, I've always liked covering golf the most, and that's more than the NFL, more than the NBA. I've always, once I got into golf, and I really got into golf like a lot of Americans and a lot of minorities, to be specific, when Tiger just started taking off in the mid-1990s, I became attracted to the game. I never played golf growing up. I played it a little bit in graduate school, which was right about the time Tiger was taking off. So I got into the game, and then I got into golf writing and reading some of the wonderful, feature writers, Dan Jenkins and Herbert Warren Wind and Jaime Diaz and Rick Riley and people like that, Michael Bamberger. I got into golf writing as a craft, and it interested me, and I thought it was beautiful writing and evocative, and the tension and pressure of 4 days of major championship golf, and all the while here's Tiger, breaking records and doing things that we'd never seen before. It just all came together for me, and I'd always liked golf and loved golf writing, and the fact that Golf Channel came calling last year, it was like, wow, this is really kind of the pinnacle. This is a great place for me at this time. I've been writing about golf. I've been living golf as a golf writer for, a little over a decade, and now is a chance to kind of put all my skills, to the forefront on a Golf Channel, and it was an opportunity I couldn't pass up.
Now, take me back in time. I was young. I didn't really understand the Tiger Woods phenomenon. Don't get me wrong. He looked like me, and I was like, oh, he's golfing. But take me back to somebody who is a sports, an educated sports fan when Tiger came up in the mid to late 90s. What was that like?
Yeah, Tiger came up at a time when the game didn't really have a dominant player. Nick Faldo and Greg Norman were definitely kind of in retreat, in their 40s, two great legends of the game, and here came this kid from California and Stanford who looked nothing like anybody out there, who hit the ball a long way, who had this passion and flair for the dramatic, winning 3 straight U.S. junior amateurs, then 3 straight U.S. amateurs, and breaking these records in college, and showing this fist pump and wearing this red shirt on Sundays, and everything he did was different, and he was so intense and so focused that, your eye was just drawn to him. He looked different, first of all. He did things different. He hit the ball past everybody. He talked about how he expected to win every time he teed it up, and then he almost did just that, and when he didn't, he was disappointed. He just raised the bar and set the bar, set his goals so high that people shook their heads at first. The golf establishment was like, oh, this young man will learn. Nobody dominates this game. And he absolutely dominated the game in ways that we hadn't seen. And I think he became transcendent. If Tiger was in the mix, sports fans paid attention. News junkies paid attention. It wasn't just the golf fan. His skills were so above and beyond everybody else that he attracted the non-golf fan. And that's what was really at the heart of Tiger Mania, is that people that didn't even care about golf started paying attention to the game.
Now, I mean, that's awesome. I mean, I don't think it hasn't even been a full 20 years. That's yeah, yeah. He completely changed the landscape of golf, how it's perceived by the non-golf community.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And he really, I mean, from cable television ratings to network television ratings to increased purses and prize money, he has, forever altered the landscape of golf, and he's made a lot of millionaires beyond himself.
So last August, excuse me, when Golf Channel came calling, I mean, we just talked about how you were a writer. When's the last time that you were on air, whether radio or TV?
Yeah, I'd been doing it a little bit here and there. I'd get calls from radio stations or even Golf Channel if I was at a tournament as a writer. Maybe once or twice a year, I would pop on and say something if it was like a big moment in the game. If Tiger or Rory did something, and Rory McIlroy did something incredible, they may come to me for a soundbite. But I didn't have a regular broadcast gig. I do web video work for Sports Illustrated, for SI.com, about once a week, where I'd be asked questions to comment on the football game or a golf tournament. But this was diving into a new genre for me, a new realm, a new full-time job. And in a lot of ways, it was coming home. I worked at the radio station in college at UCLA where I did play-by-play and had a microphone in front of me then on a pretty regular basis. But this was going to be a brand new challenge. And it's still almost a year in. It's still a challenge, still learning, still, some new things. But, it's funny how that's kind of come full circle for me as someone wanted to be a broadcaster that ended up writing for some 15 years and now back to broadcast.
So tell us about the show, the morning drive on Golf Channel. Like what is the show about, and what do you bring to the show that is cool for you to share with?
Yeah, Morning Drive is now a 7-day-a-week morning show on from 7 to 9 Eastern. Several days a week. It repeats at 9 a.m. to 11. It's a show that's, we like to think of it as a one-stop shopping for the golf fan and for the sports fan. We give you recaps of the previous day or week's tournaments. We forecast the coming events. We talk about golf fashion. We talk about golf instruction and equipment and the best places for you to play and how to get onto this private course. And if you're traveling, where should you play? Where are the good deals? So we like to think we're all about golf, the entirety of the game. We cover the majors. We cover the regular tour events, the men's game, the women's game, juniors, amateur events, colleges. We like to think we are the meeting place, the water cooler for golf fans. And my role, I bring my journalist background. I bring my years of covering golf, which goes all the way back to 2001. So that's, going on 12 years now of covering the game. I also bring just a sports writer's background as well, being able to compare the Masters to the Super Bowl and mostly talk about my experiences interviewing Tiger and Phil and covering the Masters tournament. I've been overseas several times to cover the British Open, and I've covered the U.S. Open, the PGA, Ryder Cups, President's Cups. And then in addition, I'm also getting opportunities to actually, host the show and go to commercial and, do interviews and do some of the traffic, as they call it on television, running interference between a CNBC business report and an upcoming interview with Lee Westwood, those kind of things, which are the harder fundamentals, but I'm getting more and more comfortable each day with those.
Now, we talked about earlier with Tiger and just minorities in golf. Your role is a very, very visual role. we also talked before in this interview just about the pressure of, or maybe more so the expectation of the audience. How do you see your role as far as maybe not the future of golf or anything too esoteric, but just like, what is your grasp of your moment right now in relation to golf with the show?
Yeah, Dave, I think I have a really important role. There's no question it's a visual role. I'm aware that of what I look like, and it may not be what golf has always looked like, but I think it is what golf is today. You know, we have a very diverse set with diverse backgrounds, folks from the Northeast and from the South. We have men, we have women. You know, I'm an African American on the show. I love the fact that I can bring that perspective and just bring that to our audience, and I think that people appreciate me for me, and they like, you know, what I say, and sure, there have been times at golf tournaments where I've been stopped by African Americans, or even on Facebook or Twitter, people saying, "Hey, you know, good job," because they see that it may be kind of a unique situation, that I'm sort of a rarity or a novelty. But even on my show, I'm not even so much. Ahmad Rashad is also a co-host from a couple days a week on Morning Drive. So I do think it's neat. I think it speaks to the growth of golf and how it's become a much more diverse game than it was 20, 30, 40 years ago. And I am honored and love my role in that kind of push forward, in that progress that the game has made. I treasure it, I honor it, and I value it and respect and understand the importance of that to a lot of people.
Now here's a question. I wrote this down while you were talking before, so there's my disclaimer. But you were talking about your name being on the cover of SI after the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Can you compare that to being on the show on Morning Drive with Ahmad Rashad or whoever the other co-hosts are, and just be? Is it one of those things where it's just, hey, you know, 2 different seasons of my life, or it's just part of my career, or is it just the symbology of both is, you know, just breathtaking?
Yeah, it's funny. The power of television often surprises me. And, you know, walking around a golf course just a couple days ago at Sabonic, which is where the U.S. Women's Open is being played, and having people randomly come up to me and ask me for my autograph or ask me to take a picture so they could put it on Facebook. I mean, that's a bit of a mind blower. You know, when you're writing, you're much more anonymous. You know, my name, you know, doesn't mean a lot to people in the same way that my face would. At the same time, there were people who knew what I did, and I got letters and comments about my stories, and people appreciated that. And being on the cover of SI is still one of the highs, you know, of my career, and having done it several times for different stories. I still have copies of those magazines. It means so much, and I still treasure that craft so much. And the TV thing, it's funny. I often sit on set and we're having conversations about golf, and sometimes I forget that I'm on TV. I'm just having a conversation. You know, I may look into the camera or maybe talking to a cohort, but I'm really just having a conversation, and it feels very natural. One thing people often tell me is that I look so natural on TV, and I'm always smiling. I'm really having a good time. I'm enjoying talking about a game that I love so much, and I think that people see that and recognize that, and it's neat to be recognized on TV. It's neat to have people come up to me and say, "Hey, I like what you bring to the show," and it's a different satisfaction than having your name on SI, but no less fulfilling. I think both feelings are pretty cool.
So what are some of your, well, let me not say future goals, because that makes it seem like you're trying to jump ship. That's not what we're talking about here. But what are some of your expectations that you're putting on yourself just on the show, or in golf, if you will, at large?
Yeah, I just want to continue to bring smart analysis I didn't play the game, so I'm not going to bring a professional golfer's view, but I make calls, I talk to coaches, I talk to players. I do what I've always done, is try to keep abreast of the issues, and when there's an issue in the game, be able to say, hey, I called so-and-so, and this is what the players are thinking, or this is what this coach says his player is working on. I want to continue to have fun. I want to get better at the fundamentals of broadcasting. I've been told I have a nice energy, that I look happy and excited to be there, and that comes through the channels, comes through the television set. And I want to continue to be that. I enjoy the job. I love the job. I always want to feel like I'm welcome in the viewer's home, because when you're a morning show, people are getting ready for their day. They're hopping out of the shower. They're eating their Cheerios. They're getting the kids ready for school, and they're inviting you into their home, at a very private, personal time of day, and you want to be smiling. You want to get people off to work in a good mood, make them laugh, inform them. And when you see me smiling on set, that's not contrived. That's joy and happiness of the role I have, and I just want to continue to do it better. I think that's just the simple truth. Just continue to enjoy what I'm doing, bring my strengths and background to the fore as much as possible, and have a great time doing it.
That's solid. Like, what? My next thought was, what are some of the expectations, predictions, if you will? And I'm not going to hold you to them as far as golf. Like, what do you see? What are some of the things that you've seen that you're like, wow, I wonder how this is going to play into the golf landscape going forward?
I think probably two things. One is just the influx of youth. We're seeing teenagers compete and succeed in golf, be it Lydia Ko, 16 years old now, an amateur who can compete and has won a couple of professional tournaments. There's a 14-year-old girl in the U.S. Women's Open. We've seen a 19-year-old Jordan Spieth on the PGA Tour nearly win. I think we'll continue to see young players do well. I think they're all kind of heirs of Tiger's throne. They saw Tiger get in shape young and win early and win often. And I think these kids coming up behind him feel like there's nothing that's out of reach. And then maybe the biggest story in golf is just Tiger's pursuit of Nicklaus's record, 18 majors. He has 14, and he's been stuck on 14 for 5 years. And can he get to that number and break that number? That's what his whole career has been built around. And he's come back and started to win again, but winning majors has always been what his goal has been, and that's the question: can he get back to that point?
It's really been 5 years?
Yeah, 2008 was the last time he won a major championship. It's been that long. It's the longest drought of his career.
Wow. Okay. Well, where are the places that we can find you online?
You'll see my stories on golfchannel.com. They also show snippets of Morning Drive. It's called Overdrive, is where we'll have a couple of question and answers sessions with one of our co-hosts about some issues in the game, issues of the day. And then, of course, I'm on Golf Channel, Morning Drive. Right now I'm on 5 days a week, Thursday through Monday, and then on 7 days a week during the 4 major championship weeks, 5 if you include the Ryder or President's Cup. So, I'm on golfchannel.com and Golf Channel proper.
Okay. Well, Damon, I just want to thank you for doing the interview. This was enlightening.
David, thank you very much for having me.
All right. Thank you all for being a part of it.